This is how everybody works. I mean, I coach people how to do this learning thing. They get better and better and better. There's a video called that I put up called "What is a Practiclass," and it's music, but anyone who would watch it would look at the before and after and go, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" And I'm working with stuff that people have been struggling with for weeks or months and couldn't get. Yet in 20 minutes we fix it. We can do the same thing with all sorts of academics, all sorts of processes, anything that you need to learn, like memorizing as much stuff as you need. It's totally out there for anybody. And I go through this stuff and people are amazed, but when left to their own devices, human beings don't like to concentrate.
That's true. And they often lack the discipline to keep things consistent.
It's not just that though. There are plenty, and I was this too, who was disciplined enough to sit down and do the work. As long as I'm doing something unpleasant that I'd probably rather not be doing otherwise, I must be doing the work.
Yeah.
What I've come to find is that human beings need to be tricked into focusing.
Yes.
Hey, let's say you want to memorize a speech. How about every other word? Yeah. Why not start with every other word? Now, why won't people do this? Because we believe in our society that if you get worse at something, it means you're not learning. Learning is only indicated by getting better at stuff, which leads us to do mass repetition, one after another, okay, which looks like we're getting better. But then the benefit isn't there the next day. Because all you're doing when you're doing mass repetition of something is you're using your working memory, which only holds 7 to 9 pieces of information at a time. You're using your working memory to inform the next repetition that you do. The next day, it's not going to be in your working memory. What you've actually done is you stored it in your long-term memory, and you need to get it back, work on getting it back out. It's called retrieval practice. Our education system is pretty good at getting stuff in, terrible at getting stuff back out. And to do that, you actually have to do less work. You actually have to do, if you really want to memorize something, you have to get it to a point where you kind of have it and then repeat it, even with errors. There's something called the testing effect that shows if you know something and you repeat it, even if you get it wrong, your likelihood of getting it right the next time, even if you don't do any other studying, goes way up. So you leverage the testing effect, which means making mistakes.
Yeah.
Which is an indicator that we're not learning, but it's not. That's where learning occurs. There is just like with weightlifting, when you're at the gym and someone's struggling, feel the burn, right? It's that burn in your muscle that is unpleasant, but isn't an indicator that you're being injured. It's an indicator that you're getting what you want. So we have these sayings, feel the burn, you come on. Well, I am convinced there is a burn of learning. And I always say, feel the blurn. And it's not just a marketing catchphrase. You really have to remind people when they're struggling, because just watch, get someone to struggle when they're learning something. I suck, I'm terrible. Oh, geez. No, you're not. You're learning.
Yeah, I blurn. I love that because you're right. There's no growth in comfort, and realistically, the only indication that you're actually learning and you're growing is some sort of struggle. And I love, we talked about golf, and if anybody follows golf, Tony Finau just won 2 weeks in a row after years and years of just or mini tournaments, I should say, of not winning. I think it was maybe 5 years of not winning. And he said this quote, I'm going to butcher it. He just said, a winner is someone who just kept trying after losing. And I think that really embodies a lot of what you're saying. It's we've been taught that once we do something well, we learned it. When it's actually the inverse. It's like, we're struggling. That means that we are learning it. And I think that's a really important mind shift. And I think it not only applies to learning a skill, but I think it's very similar to business. Now, granted, if you're just, 10 months in the red, then maybe you're doing something wrong.
Right.
But at the same time, there's still a ton of learnings that happen in those months where your business is facing challenges. And I think that I think that's a really, really good mind shift. I really do.
You use the term mind shift. There's actually a name in psychology for this, mindset. Carol Dweck, she's at Stanford, who's done 30 plus years of research on this stuff. And, and she has found clearly that, for instance, a belief in talent can lead to less learning because one believes they should get something more quickly and will give up very quickly. The fear of making mistakes. I taught in a classroom for enough years, and I don't care, you know what I'm talking about. Hey, class, who knows the answer to this? And they all sit there and they're like, 2 people do this. Why?
Right.
You're in a class because you don't know the stuff that's in the class. Otherwise, you'd proficiency out. You wouldn't be in that class.
Right.
So you're supposed to not know. As you're going along learning to know something, the teacher who is teaching you asks if you know something to see if you do, so that we can then either do more there or move on to something else. And you're afraid to show that you don't know.
Right.
This idea that mistakes are somehow our own failure instead of something to be learned from. There's a great violin pedagogue, a great teacher at Indiana University, who says mistakes are simply pieces of information.
Yep.
And you say, oh my gosh, well, what if I leverage my whole business on this one decision? I'm not talking about those decisions. I'm talking about the 1,000 other decisions that led up to your expertise level of skill and the 200 failures in those 1,000 decisions. What do you do when you fail there? Another thing, here's an interesting thing. If you have employees or something like that, Dweck found that if you gave semi-difficult puzzles to children to complete, and they struggled a little bit and got it together. If you told one group, you're so talented, you have an amazing gift to do puzzles, that's amazing. If you told the other group, you would tell the other group, you worked hard and you earned that. You've become a little bit smarter. When offered an opportunity to do a more difficult puzzle, many less of the people who were told they were talented will take you up on that. They want to stay in their comfort zone and not jeopardize their designation of talent amongst their peers. Watch out for that in our own thinking. Watch out for that in employee thinking. If you're unwilling to take the leap, you're never going to get to the other side. And sometimes you fall. Well, someone will come rescue you, get back up and learn to take the leap again. That's mindset. In fact, it's one of the top 3 books I recommend for anyone to read who wants to know anything about learning. Most of what I have done, where I've gotten all this information, which I had applied to music for a long time and still do, comes from cognitive science, which is not about music. Some of it is motor skill learning, of course. A lot of it is cognitive science, which is, the whole entire realm Dweck is involved in. And and I should also add, because depending on the age of someone who's doing this, and depending if they have kids, you'll find mindset in schools. It has been boiled down, like much good research, into a feel-good trope that it was never meant to be. Okay, that take your tests and make mistakes and don't feel bad. Well, yeah, I guess don't feel bad, but no, you're supposed to enjoy making them. Not enjoy, accept, and say it's just a challenge. It's no big deal.
Embrace.
If my shoes are untied, I tie them. It's no big deal.
Right.
I don't bawl because my shoe's untied. What do I do?
Yeah.
That's the problem we have with teaching and learning, is what do we do? There should always, and there is always, a solution. You can't learn something? Let's figure out why. There's a reason for that. And that's what we don't have in teaching. What we learn in our schools, at least in this country, we're in the United States, what we learn in our schools is, here's the stuff you need to learn. Go home and do homework. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I mean, I'm going to give you directions, but I'm not going to tell you how to study for tests either. They don't tell you how to study for tests in school. They started in the last 10, 20, 30 years. And the stuff they're telling you is wrong, just wrong. The whole highlighting in different colors and rereading, wrong. You're using cues. You got to get away from the cues as quickly as you can.